Today we have our special guest, Professor Jens Ludloff. Professor, he has his practice in Berlin. You can find him on the name Ludloff and Ludloff. Please go there because he has many very interesting interventions in not only in Berlin but in the neighborhood too. Some of them are made of wood. We're not very high experts on wood or timber structure, and he is an expert in this. That's why there's one of the reasons that we invited him to Cracow. By the way, you made your diploma work double in Münster in Germany and also in Cracow, and he worked on Nowa Huta. That's why he is also an expert in architecture in Cracow, of course. Okay, Jens, the floor is yours. We have an hour, maybe longer.
Thank you for your nice introduction, and thank you for. No, you mentioned it, so everything fine. Thank you for coming, and today, so it will be a long journey, to be honest, and I hope you can follow all these, let's say, different crossings I try to make. Because world in balance is something that's like a very big building, and I would like to talk about tiny details and that's smaller ones. To start with, I'm going to Italy, to the Giardini in Venice, and you find these kind of pavilions there, and it's always good to be in Venice, and each year, not only each second year when the Architecture Biennale is taking place or part. And you have this, I choose these two pavilions. One is the Danish pavilion here on the right-hand side, and in the background is the pavilion of the Nordic countries. And they are, let's say, just two of about 20 pavilions. And they host exhibitions yearly, one times for art and one times for architecture. And in between these buildings is exactly 30 years. So this was built in 1932 and the newer one was built in 1962, so nearby. But you have a totally different, surely 30 years slots, and you can say, okay, this pavilion, the Danish pavilion, is a little bit old tradition, yes. And it has a totally different style, sure, architectural language, and a totally different idea of what space for art could be. This is like you can say like a temple building with a cellar, and the art pieces are hidden. And this is more like, yes, first of all, you don't see any column. You don't know how does it works, where the beams or where the load is coming from. You see, if you know these pavilions, there's one tree standing in this pavilion. This is a concrete structure. But you are invited as a guest to see the artists or the art or architecture, whatever is exposed there. So it's only 30 years and two totally different ways of thinking of, let's say, environment, of space. And it's, I would like to stress what's going on with our architecture, but also how our architecture, let's say, changes over the time. Because we are not every day the same. And I start with the first building that we built in our office, and it was for Sedo Stoll AG, the producer of office furniture, and this building in the middle is a research and development center. And as you see, this is more or less on the borderline, on the small village, and there is next to a kind of industrial agglomeration. So, and we built this in between buildings. It's related to both sides, the industrial complex and the small village, and also the reacts of these two formalities. And when we go on, so okay, there's this old building with a, let's say, a formal rooftop and everything. But our building surely it has nearly the same color, not material, but color, but it's a little bit, it doesn't touch the ground, for example. That's not just in case of construction, but it's case of that what we want to show. And that, on the other hand, this material is a little bit see-through, so it's, at the end it's made out of fabric, this facade, and react directly on changes of light, daylight, artificial light, and so on, as you will see. So this is also a kind of, yeah, what is it? Is it a column? Is it something that's load-bearing, or it's just an idea of column? And surely we started to hide everything what's load-bearing construction. There's not construction visible. And when the, say, the artificial light is changing and the sunlight is going down, then this facade changes its totally appearance. So that's architecture can directly react. Even it's just a reaction of this kind of fabric facade. Let's see concept, very simple concept. We have a kind of ground floor. It's made out of concrete because there the prototype was, there are the different workshops for prototyping these furnitures. And on these, let's say, red carpet here, there's the office space for the designers. And there in the middle, there's standing a kind of volume that's like a little, this building. There are conference rooms and stuff like this. And this is all covered with this kind of, let's say, folded head here. This is also a wooden construction in blue, and then the fabric binds it all together. So that's just very simple concept. That's the ground floor again. You enter here and you go up the staircase. And these are these different workshops to build prototypes. And here a test road to test the prototypes. And going up the staircase, you enter in this large office space, and there is the kind of larger conference room. They do their presentations there, and so. And this is also, you will see, is cladded in textile, because you have a very large space, and a large space to work in. You need a special acoustic, and therefore this office space has a reduction of acoustical noise. You can also do it here, I remember. So you enter through a facade made out of textile, so as you saw, and then so it looks a little bit like a tent maybe, fragile, and then you open the door and you get this kind of concrete staircase. So that's not the things that you expected maybe, and then you go up, and then you have this space with this folded roof, just one space with this kind of building in the middle. Then you can access here, this is this exhibition room, also with doors made out of fabric. So what's interesting here, or it should be interesting, that there's no construction visible. It's hidden, yes? So we avoid to tell about how it's constructed. And the same idea, hiding, is also we did years later, here in 2014. This was a competition drawing. And the interesting thing, we won this competition, even that you will say, okay, I don't know what what can I see here? What is it? So it's sometimes good for the jury to make a kind of, you can interpret everything here. You don't know nothing and say, oh, but they liked it for some reason. So this is a kind of, yes, we call it Children's Embassy. It's for SOS Kinderdorf. It's an international group of people. It's a private organization who's, let's say, cares for children's rights worldwide. And they have worldwide houses like this. But this was kind of new typology, a little bit shifted, because normally they really care about children. Then they recognized if we care about children, we have also to care about parents, because that's so no children without parents. And you cannot care only about the children. And then in Berlin, this building, they care about, yes, young people who let's try to get in the, let's say, in the, we'll say, first working market. And they build a kind of school within this house. But this is a special school, you will see. These are the different floors. Here's the entrance level. This school has, for example, a restaurant where you can learn, you will teach to be a cook or a waiter or waitress and so on. So there's always in this building is something that you learn. So, and there is a big conference center above, and there are classrooms above, and then there is some administration, and there is a hotel, and it's not a, let's say, normal hotel. It's also a hotel that you can, let's say, you can check in as a private person, but all people who are working there, they learn to work like a hotelier, even like a roommate and stuff like this. So this is a school building, a practical school building. And there's also, there are only 20 rooms, this hotel. So it's too small to get a real hotel, but you can learn to be a hotelier, for example. There are also some conference room above, and there's a terrace, and there's a little bar, and so on and so on. So this kind of mix of use has generated this kind of facade where you don't know what's happening, but there could happen everything. So that's they like very much. And then after this competition, when we won, then we have to somehow to build it. And then the next question, okay, it is a little bit more regular. This was just folded out of normal paper, and we have not thousands, but lots of these folded papers to get an idea how the facade at the end could look like, and surely how they can be manufactured. And here is a later drawing. You see, this is a section, and this is the elevation here, and this is the fabric put on this surface as an outer skin. And here we have, let's say, standard wooden facade made out of large panels, which are hang before this structure. And this structure is just a, let's say, simple concrete structure slab. But what you here easily see, this is, for example, a window. This belongs to the hotel. These windows belong to administration, and these windows belong to the school, the classrooms. These windows belong to the restaurant and the foyer and the gallery space. So you see there are lots of different demands on each level, and therefore we covered it with this kind of fabric that binds it together. This is just the way we constructed. So these are prefabricated wooden panels, already glazed and so on. This is kind of normal building site. And you see inside, it was, let's say, we tried to get it all made out of wood. Also, it's a construction that was not possible at that time. With this mix of use, in case of fire regulations, so we started with this kind of wooden facade. This is without this fabric cladding. But you get an idea what's going on in this building. This is a bar on top. This is a terrace, and so on and so on. This is the level of these hotel spaces. And the client wants that you have to move these panels, surely, but these panels can move, but only by hand. So you really have to lean out of the window, and you have to, let's say, to need power. So that also belongs to this idea that this is a facade that you can change, and you have to change it with your own hands. It's not automatically driven. So this was the main idea of this building, that everybody who's visiting or who is working there or who goes to school there, he has to do with the building, and he must, let's say, maintain the building in many ways. This is the restaurant area in the ground floor. Then you go up. In the first floor, there is here the conference area. Then you go up the next level, and you go to the school level. This is the inside from the conference room. And there are, let's say, this conference room is directly connected to the restaurant on the one hand, and it's also open to the public. So you can, let's say, rent the space for a little money and to have a conference there. So it's a concept, and we did a conference there belonging to housing, the future of the housing problems we have in lots of bigger cities, and there, for example, the housing projects. They are not the old ones, but the new ones that they did in Vienna was one of the topics there. So a space to discuss, a house that at the end is open to the public, and is as well as a house to learn. Yes, where you learn, it's cool. Where you don't say, oh, school, that's something. So you learn, you have there's a restaurant, a cafe, that's all. Living and learning is not separated, it's all comes together. So that is the point with this kind of architecture. And this is now we are jumping a little bit in history, going back in the year of 1932, there was a exhibition at the MoMA in New York, and this was, let's say, in my opinion, the birth of the modern misunderstanding, let's say, because this was well known. There was published, and Philip Johnson, you surely know, or Henri Roussel Hitchcock. They were the authors. They made the curators of the exhibition. And this you see here, this is a Bauhaus in Dessau, as a model of the Bauhaus. And they collect what they thought was modern at that time, in the 30s, in the early 30s. But the problem is they left out lots of projects. And what we now, let's say, when we say international style, then these pictures come up. Later on, this was meant the Modern Architecture International Exhibition. It was a name, but after the exhibition, everybody knows it, and international style. What they, let's say, showed there, that was known under international style. Now the question is, what's international style? And we all have an idea what it is. But, this is not international style. But this was a building done by Rudolf Schindler, an architect trained in Vienna. He was students of Otto Wagner, but he early went to America to work with Frank Lloyd Wright, and he was also related to Japan. And he built here his own building. That was his kind of first practice, but he did lots of buildings in California. And you see, I don't know exactly, but I think this guy on the right-hand side is maybe Schindler. They built this building by their own hands, but they did everything what's modern. They did prefabrication, and they did a wonderful, let's say, interpretation of space. Maybe you can get an idea of this kind of space, or maybe you know this building already. It still exists, and it's surely, when the way guides us to California, then this is a kind of must to see. And you have a little bit the expression that there are no borders between inside, outside, the roof, and so on. And this reminds us maybe to this building, the Katsura Villa, which was it's nearby, built nearby Tokyo, and it was in the 17th century. And this was well known by all these modern architects, Walter Gropius and so on. So they know this. But this has complete another way of thinking. I think that was a big misunderstanding that they all know this villa, but maybe they haven't learned to read the space behind it. But Schindler does. And so to go on with the story, this we have in mind when we think about, let's say European, maybe better, architecture. Space, building a space, dealing with roofs or let's say with ceilings. That's a starting point. Okay, then the next will be the wooden construction. You mustn't have. But this was in going step by step. This a big one. Aubert Millard was the first engineer. He, let's say, avoid having beams underneath the ceiling. So it's a flat ceiling plate, and there you have these mushrooms. But as you know, the mushrooms year by year disappeared, and now when you construct, there's a building like this. This is a, let's say, award-winning masterpiece of construction. Because when you see around what's built even today, and this was 1914, so over 100 years ago, Corbusier, he didn't, let's say, it was not his idea, but as each time Corbusier knows how to present which construction in the right time. And that's a fantastic idea to have these slabs made out of concrete. You have not a load-bearing facade anymore. You have columns, and you have also here no beams underneath. So this is a wonderful construction. But it's, on the other hand, a little bit boring. And when you think that we do it the same way even today, there are reasons why to do it another way. And you all need these kind of timber truss constructions, built more or less everywhere. This is very ornamental, but it reminds me very much to this construction. And this construction was, let's say, the idea of Friedrich Zollinger. And you know these kind of roofs when you a little bit go through the history of building, because this was an idea how to save wood, because there was a lack of wood, and to make a roof construction with just with planks, very cheap and short wood. You don't need a ceiling like this. Let's say a very large tree. You have just very small boards here, and this idea was also an idea how to save wood, and it was like this. So this kind of lamelle construction goes over two fields, and it's a light curved. It's a kind of early lightweight construction. And you know, we are all talking today about lightweight construction. It's an early one and very simple. Okay, and this was built in 1918. So what earlier started was the Bohlenbinder by Philibert Delorme. It was in the 16th century. He also made roof constructions with our very short boards, just by adding them with nails, and by adding all these short lamelles, you get a longer truss. And a little bit more intelligent Zollinger, this is a Zollinger construction, because it puts the stiffness into the space, and therefore this is a relatively weak construction when you have forces from the side. This brings a stiffness here. And then we thought, okay, what's the problem here? And it's really easy to recognize. Sorry. You have lots of knots. And they must bring the stiffness in this construction. And so we said, okay, nowadays we are living in the time of glue. By wood and glue is something that works very well together. And therefore we said, okay, let's get rid of these knots and find a construction which avoids knots. And this is a reflecting ceiling plan here. And this is a section, and you see this kind of ceiling, and it's just with this lamelle construction glued underneath. And it was calculated by Arab as these days in, I don't know, 2008. And it works, and we make a prefabrication of these kind of elements, these ceiling elements, and they put it together. And this connection is just a connection with glue on top of this wooden panel, and it looks like this. So this is a small canteen, but this, let's say, makes us the awareness there must be something even more exciting, because when Zollinger does this, it really belongs to the space in two axes, so like a cupola. And we had another project. We said, okay, we span not only in one axis, one direction, we try to span with the same system into different directions. And we get a contract to build an exhibition hall, but it's an exhibition hall for furniture, so not for art, but also this company called Ophelis, and he does also office furniture. And you see the neighborhood, this is a manufacturing here, and there's a little bit of administration building. And here, as you see, that's not a town planning, that is horrible, it's just in the outskirts, next to Karlsruhe in Germany, somewhere. And we say, okay, then we make a building like an elephant, but that comes later with the elephant, but a building that has just an interior. And so that's this kind of elephant. You enter here, and this is a closed wall, and then you have here conference rooms, toilets, and so on, and the large toilet, the large conference room. And so you have some columns, because the span should be large, and we have a span about nearby 20 meters here, and this is made out of wood, everything. And this is the ceiling, but you cannot build a building out of wood just on the side. So we said, okay, we have to make what kind of idea of prefabrication could stay when we on the same way have two directions of span. So these are the elements that we then later on designed. Here, this is CLT, cross-laminated timber. It's 60 centimeters, and we glued these kind of lamelles underneath each of these little, let's say, panel, and put this on our columns. So we have a span in two directions, and this is in timber construction really not easy to find. These are the columns, and we put these kind of ceiling elements together, and then we get a ceiling. This works in two directions, the span, and even it's added. It's from the structure, let's say from the view of the structure engineer, it's one plate. This is one column. We had to, in case of transportation, this is half of a column. This is possible to transport with a kind of normal transportation in Germany. And so we had to add these two together to get one column. And also this is 16 meters long. This is the most maximum that you can transport in a kind of normal transport. And these kind of elements were put to the side, and the columns were horizontally put on these knots, and then they are lifted up. And we have several of these axes, and in between these axes with the columns, there's another column here, are these inner fields which fill these kind of gaps. This is interesting because in case of water, the production is not like you make maybe the flooring and then the walls and then the roof. No, you do everything at the same time, and the building grows horizontally. Yes, so this is the end. So to cover everything, because rain protection is very important when building with wood. Okay, then it's surely when these, so there's a kind of skylight around, but it's a closed wall, and this is the concept of this exhibition space. And there's one of these kind of exhibitions they have here. They have these layouts for conference rooms and for these soft seating areas and all what you have these days in office spaces. It looks more like, let's say, housing situation or living room, but they sell as furniture for office. And when you leave, you know this elephant motif here, when you leave the exhibition hall, you leave to this kind of single swinging door. Okay, that was, let's say, what can we do with two axes of span? It's interesting. And how can help us gluing together? Gluing is something fantastic, but gluing is not so fantastic when you think about what will we do in, let's say, 50 years with this wood. Yes. So the recycling is not solved yet, and therefore we made a project here next to this wonderful railroad here, in this situation. So there's kind of noise, and this plot was meant to be a plot for a kindergarten. It's very interesting because housing is not allowed there. It's too loud. Yes, that's why housing is not allowed, but kindergarten is possible. Yes, because the ears are so small that it doesn't work. No. So we decided to make a big wall, this big wall, and it's not just ends up where let's say the building ends. The wall goes even in the landscape. Here's the trains are coming, and this is a wall that surrounds this kind of courtyard and also the building. Again, then you enter here from this little place before it, and then you have here these group rooms, and then you have here the most exciting thing in kindergartens are always these bathrooms or toilets and these areas where the water coming and so on. So that's very important. That's why we put them in a single, let's say, box, and then they can walk or run around these in circles and so on. And then that's a ground floor, and that's just one upper floor. This is the first floor, and you have more or less the same. There you have a terrace. There's a terrace building here, and then you have these kind of sanitary objects in the floor, and these group rooms here, and some special rooms. They have a kitchen and so on and so on. That's just the program. And to see this kind of wall, this sound protection wall, which, let's say, binds it all together, and these are two levels, terraced levels. And then it said, okay, glue is maybe not the answer. What would be the answer? Because we would like to test something. Then we say, let's try to build without glue and try to build without screws. Because screws and, let's say, the metal joints, how can we avoid metal joints? And that's not something that we sort out in our office. It's these kind of joinings are traditional joints. They are, let's say, dovetail joints. And this was historically, let's say, done by craftsmen, surely. But today, we are able to deal with CLT manufacturing. So it's very, let's say, common these days. And the question is, can we, so it looks like this, can we build a whole building out of this? And what does it mean to the whole construction? Because then you have a beam and another beam, and the connection is very easy. So what does it mean? And this is the, let's say, the other part to connect the dovetail. And even the shaft of the elevator, for example, can today easily be done in wood. So at the beginning they said, oh, that's not possible, and a shaft for an elevator must be concrete. But then when they recognize that this kind of shaft is so precise, so with more or less without tolerances, then all the, let's say, the manufacturers of the lifts and elevators, they liked it very much. And so this is surely a totally other construction than we saw before. This is all done, let's say, piece by piece. There were only a little prefabrication because the joining here is so easy. Here you see these kind of dovetail that they put one beam after the other, very quick, tick, 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 on site. So we never expected this before, to be honest. But I liked it very much, and each of these beams and the connections were already there, so they just put it together. And to be honest, they have to fix it with just one screw, but only one screw because of wind load and something. So, but otherwise there is no steel needed. Okay, and when you have this kind of, let's say, shape of the building, when you start designing, so it's the first mistake, to start designing without having in mind, oh, we want, at the end, we think, oh, we would like to make it just by these kind of joints, just by this beams. So how can we, let's say, fulfill this with this different geometry? And for example, this change of geometry belongs to the facade in the upper floor, because in the upper floor, as you saw, there's a terrace building, so the terrace is ending here, and there's a wall on top of this. So that you can recognize the floor down under. But on the other hand, this is something else. It's not a concrete slab, and there's something invisible forces. Now we have to show them. There was another thing, I don't know the English expression, the tenant connection, I don't know. It called in Germany verdeckter Scherzapfen. This is also, yes, a traditional joining, which now is done very easy by, let's say, computer-driven machinery. And this looks like this. So without any steel. And it's just a project that's in development, as you see, so we are not finished yet, and so some expression. So that should be more red, but it depends on the photos. This is a piece of the part of the wall that we have the sound protection wall. And that's the, let's say, the outer shell. So the inner shell is red to the little courtyard, and the outer shell is a little bit rough. They only have this kind of zigzag here. So that's the children, when they enter, they believe they go in their own building. And this will be later on the main entrance, but now it's blocked because we found on our side these kind of stones for former buildings, and we keep them, and we now use them for shaping the outskirts around the building. Coming to another idea, because we like to have, when we have already done one thing, then we say, what could be maybe the opposite? So we came from the glue to avoid any steel. And we had we won a competition here in Thuringia. It belongs to the international building competition in Thuringia. And this is next to a lake, or this is a Saale, to be honest. And this building site was here. And this was an existing building, and it's a water site, as you see. And this is let's say, a kind of hostel for young people to get in contact with all things that you can do with water, especially sporting activities. And we enlarged this existing building. This was a house just to a boat's house with this and these two wings here. And this were these competition drawings, this existing building and our two wings that we added here. And they were, you see, they were built on posts, because this was a boat house, and the water sometimes go nearby to the building. For the boat house, it was not the big problem, but for, let's say, for a hostel, it would be a problem. So that's why this just one story lifted up. And this is a lifted up area. You enter here to this is the existing building, the big terrace, and then you have here kind of gangways you will see, and these are all just the rooms to for the hostel. This is just an old drawing, but I didn't found another one. So that's more or less, that was in the competition time. And then we said, okay, we have, this is an existing building with this kind of roof, was this a kind of steel construction. And what we add is these kind of, it's not easy to see, I say, this kind of structure made out of wood. And also this roof, this folded wood, is all of wood. And then the question was, what kind of wood, what kind of connection? And as I will show later on. This was the idea behind. This is a kind of, let's say, a traditional truss construction. And the different heights of these folded roof is, let's say, here's a little bit a kind of cantilever. There's always different heights, and that makes it possible to get the right height for all these kind of beam construction. And that you see, this is, let's say, around, this is just a trunk of a tree. So we would like to combine, to minimize great energy consumption. So let's say the less we put, let's say, saw works or glue and so on our wood, that's the less gray energy it will take. So this is a section. See, this is a folded roof, a section of the roof. This is one of these rooms. Here's a, let's say, a bath and so on. And you see these very large beams inside. And here's the ground. So this is let's say, it's empty here, and the water can come even underneath this building. And when we develop this, on the same time we think it over what kind of wood. And there's, let's say, not only in Tirana, you have it everywhere. That's the problem of the climate change, the problem without water, and these roots more or less without roots. So this is a problem for our forests. And therefore, there are lots of forests that cannot be managed anymore. So we had lots of wood that normally wouldn't be on the market. So there's too much wood in the market, but too much wood that you normally don't use for building construction. So it was very cheap. That was one of the reasons. But the question was, what can we do with this kind of wood, which belongs to many parts in Tirana? And we said, okay, we check if we can focus on local food production. And we visited the sawmill and we said, oh, where do you get your wood from, and so on and so on. Because we know the timber market is totally international nowadays. So even Germany exports wood to China, for example. Totally stupid. And we said, okay, how can we deal with let's say, the forest, the local forest, in this kind of circumstances? And okay, we checked what we can do. For example, for our supports, we just took trunks of so we they didn't make anything more or less. We just take it and we make this cutout. So that's when this wood is drying, you see all these cracks. You can imagine when this wood, you have a solid wood and it's drying, you have big problem with cracks. So this cutout helps that these cracks are not more or less, they are not needed, but they are not getting too big. Then we had the problem, okay, when we just use this like our supports, how can we connect all the other things, so the beams and so on, because we cannot build a whole building out of this kind of wooden timber source. Then we have to manage these kind of things, so we have constructions that connect these, let's say, grown forms, irregular, with cut-out forms like this. This is different types of wood, because this is large, because large is able, let's say, to face rain and water conditions that we have in Tirana on the outside. And so therefore these two kind of colors. So now you see it's all built out of planks and it has its roughness. There's no glue. Okay, there are lots of screws, to be honest. We didn't expect so many screws, so now we are elevating these kind of projects and compare them, which kind of project is, let's say, for the future, the right way to think of, or let's say to make more research on these kind of constructions. Surely, and then we end up with, okay, with this, also with steel here, because formally we make here, this will be out of wood, as you see, this kind of rail, but that's not possible in any case. And here you have an idea of this folded ceiling, and this existing building, and there's another wing on the other side. So it's nearby. So that's from the last week, a picture. I hope that we get some more pictures in the next weeks. It's also for the interior. The interior is also made just out of planks, nothing else. So there's not OSB or something. That's not everything just out of planks. And let's say it works. But it has its own character. This is a larger room, it's the meeting room, but also under the, then it gives an idea of these buildings. There's a one wing, the other wing is there covered now, and the seaside here directly on the water. Okay, so these projects are, let's say, to be discussed in case of aesthetics, surely, also in case of energy consumption and how local can we build international. What's international? International knowledge is surely necessary, but local production is, we tried it and it has some, let's say, specialities you find out when you only deal with local knowledge, but the knowledge is not a problem anymore. The knowledge is more or less, yes, easy to find, but somebody who brings this to reality, that's the question. That is very nicely done with local craftsmen in the last projects. Then what we do in Stuttgart, because we think, how can we get more information about the wood? We break it, for example. You have lots of machineries, because it's interesting. There are regulations on wood. They are, let's say, they are forgotten, more or less. We have the regulations just for softwood and for hardwood. That's the two. And they, but what's the load-bearing forces are for different type of woods, nobody knows. And we tested 12 different species, and we find out that there are lots of differences between what they can afford and what not. And we break 200 of these things, and we just don't break it. Yes, so this a kind of bending, but it's also a test of compression, surely. It is the compression the other way around. So, and this is all done, and it was published in a book, and it was the first time that somebody said, okay, which are the plants which will grow in the next 50 years in, let's say, under the new conditions of our climate change? It's a big question, it's not answered yet, but therefore we must have an idea. So the forest will change. In the next years we will have lots of hardwood on the market, also hardwood to build buildings with. And we have to learn how to do it. What else we find out? We have to, coming back to physical models. Sure, these are students from the second semester, and they know all Rhino and so on. That's not a problem for them. But it's something else. They have to have also to build it in Rhino, but they construct these kinds of forms out of reality, and also the one-to-one scale. So what kind of load will my construction really take? Yes? And it's very interesting when you put one and the other sand sack on top, and then the cracks, you hear the cracks and so on, and you get a feeling what wood is able to, let's say, maintain and what's not. This we do with our second semester to build a large, I don't know exactly what it is, but it's a space. And students of 3 to 5 students, they build these kind of frames, and we add all these frames to this very long, let's say, tunnel building. And coming back to this, I think as we started with the Schindler house, it's good to use the own hands to build something. That's maybe a little bit a question. Not each of us must build their own building, but to get in contact, what does it mean? How large is a piece? How large is a screw, and so on. Even our students, they get in the second semester a saw. Each get a saw. So it's a kind of present. And they have to saw these wooden things by their own hands. And that's not, they don't go in the workshop and say, please saw these, and do it by yourself. So that's something, it's important to learn. Then you may get another, let's say, responsibility, what you build, not just drawing. Coming back to this, we know already that going on with the consumption of concrete is not, let's say, possible anymore. I mustn't. And it was when this prototype from Corbusier had his kind of 100 years anniversary. The students of the AA London did this at the Venice Biennale and put this in mind. This is a nice joke because it's just translate the one concrete idea into a wooden one. But maybe you have a gleam of idea that this will not, let's say, be the way. Building with wood is something else. So we have to think about joining and stuff like this. This works wonderful in concrete, but it doesn't work surely in wood. So that's just a first step. Thank you for your attention.